Citrus Heights man's facing federal charges in connection with the January 6 Capitol riots. The U.S. Attorney's Office says Kyle Colton was arrested last week in Folsom. Prosecutors say Colton was spotted on CCTV footage taken from within the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. They say he was also identified among a crowd of rioters in the Capitol Rotunda engaged in a physical confrontation with law enforcement. Body-worn camera footage also showed Colton not following orders to leave the Rotunda. Colton's facing multiple charges in this case. Those include obstruction, disorderly conduct in a Capitol building, and demonstrating in a Capitol building.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. So new charges have been filed against a January 6 defendant, but they're not related to the Capitol attack. 36-year-old California resident Kyle Colton was indicted this month. He was indicted on February 15th for receipt of child pornography. The court documents say that Colton received images of children, quote, engaged in sexually explicit conduct. This was between July of 2022 and December of 2023. And if he's found guilty, he could spend up to 20 years in prison and owe up to $250,000 in fines. So yet another January 6th MAGA man accused of crimes involving sex with children. I have seriously lost count at this point. You know, they really are attracted to Donald Trump, aren't they? For some reason. Yeah. But please tell me again, please tell me more about so-called pedophile Democrats.
All right, hey, this is Sean McHugh. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, Sean.
Found guilty of assaulting officers during the January 6 U.S. Capitol attack. The U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. says 35-year-old Sean Michael McHugh was on the Lower West Terrace of the Capitol during the 2021 attack. He was caught on video discharging a can of bear spray into a line of U.S. Capitol police officers. McHugh was also found pushing a large metal sign into the line of officers while yelling at them with a megaphone. He will be sentenced in September.
Prayer for Our Nation, hosted by Sean McHugh. They wanted it to be a very religious event, and Sean McHugh was doing the prayer. And if you look, it even says, J6 Thanksgiving prayer call, put on the armor of God, 4 p.m. EST Thanksgiving Day. Together we make a stand through Jesus. Some pro-J6 accounts on Twitter think his sentencing won't go poorly. Well, if they bring up his past, which involves a crime against a child, I don't see that being the case.
A Trump supporter accused of storming the U.S. Capitol and heckling police officers for protecting pedophiles previously served jail time after being convicted in the statutory rape of a 14-year-old girl, according to court records. Sean McHugh was convicted in 2010 on a state charge of unlawful sex with a minor, according to California court records. McHugh was sentenced to 240 days in jail. The victim was 14 years old, and McHugh was 23 when the crime occurred. McHugh pleaded no contest to the underage sex charge. The victim and her mother signed off to the plea agreement as part of California's victims' rights law.
New tonight, a Mint Hill man first arrested on charges related to the riots at the Capitol on January 6th is back behind bars. He's now accused of making child porn. It's a story we first broke this afternoon on WBTV.com. David Daniel was arrested a second time in September. The FBI says it found pictures of an underage girl partially naked on the cell phone they seized from him during his first arrest. An FBI agent investigating the case said in a court document that Daniel was also being investigated by Mint Hill Police and the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office in Winston-Salem after reports he engaged in sexual activity with two prepubescent girls.
Louisville man was indicted in connection to the January 6th Capitol attack. Andrew Grigsby is facing 5 felony charges, including civil disorder and assaulting, resisting, or impeding officers using a dangerous weapon and inflicting bodily injury. Federal prosecutors say he sprayed officers with bear spray as he tried to breach a police line into the Capitol. The spray forced officers to temporarily retreat, and one of those officers described himself being unable to even breathe or see without unbearable torturous pain. Grigsby's behind bars in Washington, D.C.
On June 30th, 2020, at approximately 4:45 p.m., the Kentucky State Police Electronic Crime Branch arrested Andrew K. Grigsby, 25, on charges related to child sexual abuse material. Grigsby was arrested as the result of an undercover Internet Crimes Against Children investigation. The KSP Electronic Crime Branch began the investigation after discovering the suspect uploading images of child sexual exploitation online. The investigation resulted in the execution of a search warrant and interview in London on June 30th, 2020. Equipment used to facilitate the crime was seized and taken to KSP's forensic laboratory for examination. The investigation is ongoing. Grigsby is currently charged with 12 counts of possessing or viewing matter portraying a sexual performance by a minor. Grigsby was lodged in the Laurel County Correctional Center.
Today, a January 6th rioter named Andrew Taake, I think that's pronounced correctly, pleaded guilty to assaulting law enforcement officers with chemical spray while holding a metal whip. Now he's facing justice thanks to an anonymous woman with the pseudonym of Claire, who actually got him to admit that he was not only at the riot, but was engaging in the very activity that ended up leading to his prosecution.
On the night of January 6th, she was at home in her apartment, and a lot of Trump supporters were streaming back from the Capitol to a hotel nearby. And she saw this ask from the FBI saying that they were trying to identify the rioters. So she said, okay, let's get to work, right? So she opened up the Bumble app. Bumble is the dating platform where women make the first move. So she essentially just started matching with guys. She changed her profile to conservative and then started talking to people. 3 people she got to admit that they were near the Capitol on January 6th, and she actually got this one individual, Andrew Taake, to admit that he was on the front lines, and she turned that information into the FBI. And then a few months later, she got a call from another from an FBI agent in the Houston area who was working on this case. Ended up that this Andrew individual was someone who had attacked officers. You can see it there in the photo.
They're using his past criminal history, which includes a charge of attempting to solicit a minor online, which he was out on bond for during January 6th itself. That case still has not been resolved. May 2016, Taake was arrested for soliciting a minor online, a felony. According to the PSR, Taake initiated a conversation on a social media application with an undercover officer, posing as a 15-year-old girl. After sending multiple explicit messages to the UC, Taake proposed an in-person meeting. The UC agreed and sent Taake an address. Before meeting, Taake sent additional messages to the UC, including telling her that he could, quote, go to jail for what he was doing. Taake then went to the address the UC provided and was arrested. He was released on a $20,000 bond. His bond was revoked after his arrest and detainment in this case. The case remains pending. This case with the minor, he was on bond for that. During January 6th, that case is still ongoing. I want to be clear. He was on bond for soliciting a minor online, a felony, when he decided to go involve himself in January 6th.
Two Southern Illinois men face charges in connection to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. According to the Department of Justice, the FBI arrested 37-year-old Justin LaGesse and 36-year-old Theodore Middendorf of McLeansboro on Wednesday. Both men are accused of entering the Capitol building through a broken window. The Justice Department also alleges the two helped cause more than $40,000 in damages to that window by hitting it with flagpoles. LaGesse and Middendorf are just two of more than 1,200 people the Justice Department has charged so far in connection with that attack on the Capitol.
Theodore Middendorf was accused by Illinois prosecutors of predatory criminal sexual assault of a child. Prosecutors said in a court filing that Middendorf committed an act of sexual penetration. Indiana state records indicate that Middendorf's victim was 7 years old. Middendorf entered a guilty plea in that case in May 2024 and was sentenced to 19 years in prison. He is currently registered as a sex offender in the state and remains in custody on those charges.